Hey everybody, we are back. John Delarose here, the leading Hispanic voice in science fiction, coming at you with another review of Star Wars The Mandalorian. So, last time we left the planet and after a big battle with the Bounty Hunter Guild, and now he's on the run with Baby Yoda in tow, trying to hide out and lay low for a couple months. Goes to some backwater planet that's all forested, kind of gives you a little Endor vibe and all that. They have a little spaceport there. Feels kind of backwater. They get bone broth, of course, for the little baby Yoda to drink, which has created a bunch of memes with like little baby Yoda drinking tea and all that, or whatever it is. Super cute and all that. And then they find out that there's like these raiders doing terrible things to these like little farmer villagers who, are like hunting little frog thingies or something like that in their little pools. I don't know what it is. Weird stuff. And they go and live there for a while under the guise that they'll protect them, and that will be that'll be their trade-off for having a space to live for a little bit. In the course of this, he meets with this like lady who is just like sitting at this bar, and he's like nervous about her. She thinks he is following her. She's kind of on the same path and the same mission, where she's trying to hide out because she used to be an Imperial shock trooper, and now that everything's all destabilized, she's trying to just lay low and stay away from everything. And together they end up, moving on after they fight a little bit because she thinks he's a bounty hunter. They end up in this little farming village. They then end up having to fight these raiders. It turns out the raiders have an AT-ST. So they prep all the villagers and all that for this big battle. And to take down the AT-ST, they're going to trap it, much like the Ewoks, used their weird little traps and all that. They figured this would be the best way to get rid of the AT-ST. Cool. All right, so that pretty simple, straightforward episode. The bounty hunter then, at the end of it, somebody shows up and they've got a tracker on Baby Yoda. I assume they're going to get rid of the tracker. Hopefully they remember that they put the tracker in Baby Yoda at the end of this episode. And that's basically it. So it was all right. It didn't really move the characters forward a ton. You learned a little bit about Mandalorian stuff and how they never take off the armor, regardless of the situation. You learn that he definitely prizes that above all else. There's almost a little romantic tension between the Mandalorian and a widow in the town there, which actually creates probably the most character interest throughout the episode. I think that added a little flair to where I actually was a little bit invested. You never thought they were going to lose because that they're going to win. I do like the element. I watched another YouTube review about David V. Stewart, which kind of complained about the AT-ST like being like overpowered in this sense. Like it's this ultimate death weapon when it really wasn't so much in the movies. Well, you're dealing with a whole rebel army versus like two people with guns. In terms of scale, it makes sense that the AT-ST is a pretty bad deal to these people. So I really didn't have a problem with that. The other thing I saw some YouTubers complain about is the shock trooper woman who's just more badass than badass, of course, which is what they tend to do with women in these shows. This isn't anything new. This has been going on since Buffy the Vampire Slayer, basically. And now every woman has to be a badass, blah, 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 blah. And she fights the Mandalorian to a standstill, basically. It was a little bit of a cringy scene where, she could just punch his armor and it wouldn't impact her and it would drop him. And it's supposed to be this, like, steel-plated armor and she's punching it with her fist. That's kind of stupid. I agree. But it only lasted like 30 seconds and it was stalemate. They pointed guns at each other. And then the Mandalorian's like, all right, let's talk instead of like dealing with this. And then they acquiesce. So it was fine. Get it out of the way. Maybe it's a little annoying, but it was such a small part of the episode, it really didn't matter. Her backstory as a shock trooper ended up, at least justifying it a little bit. She could have been genetically modified, cloned, whatever it is. So you can give her that pass. And they did that again with the strong woman problem. Strong female lead with the love interest that widow lady that the Mandalorian was into. He asked all the villagers if anybody could shoot a rifle, and she was the only one who could, and she was more betterer than all the men, of course. So it's like having two of those instances was a little bit on the annoying side, but it's par for the course of any movie that you're going to get at this point. So I don't know, it's not that big of a deal. I was told, somebody was talking to me earlier about how there's a narrative inconsistency with that second one because the villagers are helpless and they need people to defend them, and yet she can shoot pretty well. I don't think that's a narrative inconsistency because if you look at the beginning, she actually has some combat tactics. It was clear that she knew what she was doing by the way that she hid her child, and they demonstrated that even if they didn't tell you her backstory, much like the Shocks Trooper backstory. So, and she was less of an important character. You get the sense that the Shock Trooper chick is going to be recurring and come back at some point, while this lady from the backwater planet will not. So, of course, in writing perspective, you want to downplay details of the people who are going to be less important to the overall storyline, and you want to upplay details of people who are more important to the overall storyline. So, I did not have a problem with the writing there at all. At the end of the day, the Mandalorian in his plan succeeded. And so, he demonstrated his value as the main character. He demonstrated his ability to just run through and then drop a grenade in the thing. Pretty rad. And so it wasn't that fortunately, usually when these things go full SJW like this, the man is demonstrated as incompetent and the woman is demonstrated as far superior to him. That didn't happen here. The Mandalorian was competent and the Shock Trooper lady was competent and the other lady was competent. So all the main characters were basically competent. And you get that. I mean, honestly, this is Star Wars all the way back. Princess Leia was pretty competent with her blaster. And all the characters were pretty competent. So you want to have your main characters be competent. And since it's a big difference between this and the movies, where you've got Rey and Finn, and Rey is just so badass beyond badass, and Finn just kind of fumbles over himself and sucks. That is a difference between this and that. And so that's why I don't have as much of a problem with this one as other people on the internet seem to be having to. There does get to be a point where, you can have female derangement syndrome about characters, and I do see some people having that. And so, that's par for the course of the internet, though. So overall, this was kind of like almost a filler episode because they're in hiding. The only real thing moving the plot forward is showing that the bounty hunters are coming after him at the end of it. And they're coming after Baby Yoda more than him. So he runs off to ditch to another planet, and everything that happened here was just a one-off thing, which is fine. I mean, that reminds me of old Star Trek episodes or whatnot. Kirk would go down to the planet, deal with whatever situation it was, do his deal, and come back, and would move on to the next episode. That's exactly what happened here. And I enjoy that sort of episodic content. I liked the little farmer village. What didn't make sense to me is why they had droid robots who could do their little farming for them, and yet they still got down in the muck and water and did it themselves. It's just have your robots do it, and that makes more sense. I don't know. As a society these days, obviously that's what we're going to be moving towards. But beyond that, it was fine. The cutesy parts with Yoda at the beginning where he's in a spaceship and touching things was a lot of fun. The tea-sipping Yoda was fun. Yoda playing with the kids was fun. I care more about Baby Yoda than anything else in this series, as does everybody else on the planet. Everybody's even calling it Baby Yoda, like it's the series title. So I think this is a fine episode. It's probably the weakest of the ones so far. You didn't really get much from the Mandalorian perspective, but it was a fine episodic piece of content, overall. So it's like a 7 or 8 out of 10. I didn't regret watching it. So I hope that they get back to some main storyline. I'd like to see a little more with the Bounty Hunters Guild and this Mandalorian's resurgence or whatnot, and develop a little bit more of an overarching plot or something with Baby Yoda. Why is Baby Yoda so important to all these people beyond the fact that he's Baby Yoda? I'd like to get into more of that and get more detail on that. at this point, because we're kind of probably midway through the first season, I believe it is, and we need to get there. But they're obviously planning this for like a long multi-season arc, so they're going to try to slow roll it, which is okay. All right, yeah, like I said, 7 or 8 out of 10. Fine to watch. Not the best episode, but not the worst thing I've seen on TV in a long time. So if you like my reviews and you like my analysis from a pro writer's perspective, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like button, leave your comments what you thought about The Mandalorian Episode 4, and I will see you guys soon.